we gave it our all every day that we went to work. We left our families, we left our friends, we went out in the dark, we worked the streets, and we were injured in doing that. And the four of us testifying today were injured while trying to apprehend violent offenders. Some of us injured multiple times with these traumatic brain injuries. Who knows what the future holds for those?
Good afternoon to all. It's Representative David Eastman here at the Wasilla Legislative Information. I am joined this afternoon by some first individuals who have served in Alaska law enforcement, and I'm very glad to have each of you here today. By way of a brief introduction, we have here Scott Lanier and Rob Teeling, who worked for DPS, and Michael O'Connor, and hopefully Liam Daniels, who worked with the Anchorage Police Department. Gentlemen, thank you very much for taking the time to come and to talk with us about your experience, both in law enforcement and then also what happened after you were injured in the line of duty, and some of the things that worked well and maybe that didn't work so well in that episode. And I want to open the microphone to you now to briefly introduce yourselves, tell us what it was that happened, and hopefully we've got some time this afternoon. Hopefully there'll be plenty of time also to talk about ways that we might be able to improve our current medical retirement system so that those who want to work and are currently working here in law enforcement in Alaska can do so and are encouraged to do so by the medical retirement system. So thank you very much, and who would be willing to go first?
Good day, Mr. Eastman. Thank you for having this opportunity for us to speak. My name is Scott Lanier. Could you just confirm that you can hear me okay?
Just fine right now. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, sir. So again, my name is Scott Lanier. I was an Alaska State Trooper. I started in 2014, or I'm sorry, it started in 2010. I was injured in the line of duty August 5th of 2019 while trying to take a suspect into custody. That led to multiple surgeries in and out of work for the last 5 years, and then I was told in April that I could no longer be a trooper anymore. We've kind of talked amongst the three of us here, and we've just decided that we're just going to share our story real quick, and then if there's any questions, you can feel free to ask us those questions, and then we'll just take our individual time and we'll do our individual kind of who we are and what our story is, if you're okay with that. We'll just take our individual time and then we'll move on from there. So I wrote this up today, and I'm just going to go through and read it. I won't really go into the actual injury unless there are questions, but I will talk about my process through the disability process. The information on the Tier 4 disability system is very limited. On the Alaska Employees website, there's a chart, and it states must be total and presumably permanent disability or whose cause is directly related to the performance of duties of the job or an on-the-job injury. Benefit is 40% of the salary earned service while on occupational disability. The employer continues to make all required contributions as if the member were working, plus the member required contributions to the DCR account without deductions from the member's disability payment. Disability benefits cease when the member becomes eligible for normal retirement at Medicare eligible age and 10 years of service, or at any age with 25 years of service for peace officers. Medical insurance is available for members receiving disability when the member is eligible for normal retirement. This is all out for employees to see prior to getting hurt. This is all there is. this is all I had to go on to navigate disability. Workman's comp is no picnic to navigate either, but that's a different subject for a different day. But they are very much related for an injured cop. After my last surgery in December of 23, my doctors told me I would never be able to run or do high impact activities again, and he said that I would not be able to be a trooper anymore. I also had an independent medical review from Workman's Comp during the same time, and this doctor stated the same thing. I asked DPS Human Resources for assistance in navigating the disability process and was told that they are not involved. I asked the Public Service Employees Association Union for assistance, and I was told that they do not help. I attempted to hire an attorney for advice and was told Alaska Workman's Comp laws wouldn't let me retain an attorney unless my claim was disputed. My claim was never disputed. I lost my job on April 11, 2023. I applied for disability and finally got approved and started receiving money in June of 23. So from April to June, I received nothing. When I received my final check from the state, I saw that the state of Alaska had been charging my personal leave account for the last 6 months, and this is while I was supposedly on injury leave. They said I was outside the 1 year contract, or the 1 year that our contract stated. I asked DPS and the union for assistance, and none was provided. During this process of applying for disability, I was only allowed to talk to one person with retirement and disability section. I was repeatedly told incorrect information. While going through this, I was able to speak to others going through the process to learn that we were all told different things. While advocating for myself and others during this process, I was sent an email by a disability section employee by accident and saw that this email was intended for the disability section employees. This email called me names and stated I was extremely difficult to deal with and that I was always questioning the information provided. Mainly I was questioning it because 75% of the answers that I had been provided were wrong. I felt that I was not going to be treated fairly and impartially for the rest of the time. I also don't understand how the pay was calculated. I only got credit for January 2024 to April 2024, and my salary is based on that. I was not making a whole salary, and I was on Workman's Comp at this time. My monthly amount is very similar to a 3 to 6 year trooper when I had almost 14 years on. My Workman's Comp settlement was settled for $26,000 for putting my life on the line every day and losing my job for doing my job. I guess I now know my value. In July, I started inquiring about the employer contributions the state was supposed to be making into my retirement account. I still hadn't received anything, and I was told from the disability section that they don't know how to do it. In September, I tried to take some money from my deferred comp account, and I was told by Empower that the state had placed a hold on my account and I couldn't get any of my money. I called disability and they stopped taking my calls. I contacted the governor's chief of staff office and left a message to not have the call returned. I contacted the state ombudsman's office to file a complaint about not receiving the proper pay. The reply I got was that I needed to contact the Department of Admin Deputy Director's office and provided a phone number. I called them in September and I'm still waiting for a reply. I was then told my complaint had been closed out as resolved. I then called the director of the Alaska Wildlife Troopers and asked for help getting the hold removed from my account. He said he would try, but I still haven't got a reply. I then contacted the Deputy Commissioner of DPS, and he helped get me in contact with the admin to get the hold removed, but I still hadn't received any employer contributions. On December 31st in 2024, I called disability and asked to have someone in the state get in touch with me about the employer contributions. I finally learned that I had been made whole, but still to this day I don't know how much they're putting into my account. I still have not been advised. This system is very broken. I was forced to navigate it alone and without guidance or advisement. If I hadn't been in touch with the others going through it, I would have been lost, and the state would have walked all over me. That's kind of all I have at this point. If we get to the point where we start talking about solutions, I may have some more to add, but that's a little bit about my story and how it was for me to navigate the system. So I'll pass it on to Michael O'Connor.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, Michael.
Hi, Mr. Eastman. Thank you for hosting this. Can you hear me okay?
Go ahead.
All right, thank you. So I worked for the Anchorage Police Department. I was hired in 2011. I'll go in and discuss a little bit about my story and my process in navigating the disability. And instead of coming with just all problems, I have some ideas that I think that we can discuss and could be viable solutions moving forward. So again, I was hired by the Anchorage Police Department in 2011, where from there I went to work night shift patrol. During my time there at the Anchorage Police Department, I worked night shift patrol. I did a temporary duty assignment to our vice unit. I was promoted to detectives, where I worked crimes against children. And then in 2019, I got on with the high-intensity drug trafficking area task force at the airport. In 2014, I was involved in an officer-involved shooting in Mountain View. This was in October. During that incident, it was a car chase resulting in a collision where the suspect vehicle hit my patrol car at 61 miles an hour, and ultimately we ended up exchanging gunfire in the streets of Mountain View. I was taken to the hospital and eventually cleared for work shortly thereafter and returned to duty. I did experience a traumatic brain injury and concussion at that time, where again I went back to the road and doing the police work that we all did to protect our communities. After about a year, my wife at the time started noticing some significant changes in me and my responses and how I acted. Ultimately, the Anchorage Police Department and Municipality of Anchorage sent me down to the University of Washington Traumatic Brain Injury Clinic. I was down there for 6 weeks straight, away from home and family, receiving treatment. And then after that intensive recovery, I would go down periodically as prescribed by the physicians down there. That wasn't the only injury that I sustained during my time at the Anchorage Police Department. In 2016, another suspect who had multiple felony warrants rammed his vehicle into my car, again causing injury to me. I proceeded to continue with work, trying to provide for my family, trying to continue working. Ultimately, I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress, anxiety, and depression because of the traumatic brain injuries I received on duty. And in 2022, the determination was made that I was no longer fit for working as a police officer. And in November of 2022, I resigned from the police department. Once I resigned from the police department due to my medical disability, I had been in contact with the Division of Retirement and Benefits well before my retirement date, in order to make sure that my paperwork was in line and everything was squared away. I was on FMLA for several months, and I was receiving FMLA payments while I was on that time. And with the Anchorage Police Department, it may be different than DPS, but I was receiving 80% of my base salary for my final 10 months of employment with the Anchorage Police Department. By February of 2023, the state of Alaska had my paperwork in for disability, and they had finally approved disability and retirement benefits. That benefit was based on my final 12 months of work, and I know through conversation with Scott, his determination was based on his final 4 months of work. and we're unsure on the discrepancy. My recollection is the statute reached the last 12 months. Since I received long-term disability, I did and got on with disability and retirement benefits, I had to pay back $12,000 on the long-term disability that had been paid to me. And because I was no longer receiving an income, I was actively looking for employment outside of law enforcement. I had to take a loan out of my 401k, and that's my personal choice. So I took a loan out of my 401k for life expenses, as well as to start paying back on that loan for my long-term disability. In fall of 2023, that was the first time that I had to contact the Division of Retirement Disability Benefits so I could then continue my disability benefit. Currently, it's required that on an annual basis you have to provide documentation of disability. And because I am a Tier 4, or I was a Tier 4 employee, I did not receive any medical insurance. And I was offered the COBRA insurance, which the quote that they gave me was approximately $3,500 a month. So COBRA insurance was not a viable solution for me to maintain the treatment that I needed to continue on my path to wellness. And so I had to get a job. Once I got a job, I was able to get medical insurance and return to get my doctor's appointments. So when I applied to have my disability re-upped, if you will, I was denied. The state of Alaska said, nope, you didn't provide us documentation. We're no longer providing you with disability benefits. And I respectfully told them that it was because I didn't have medical insurance that I couldn't continue any medical treatment, because being like I said, a Tier 4 employee, I didn't have any medical. They ultimately did accept my letter and said that moving forward you are going to have to do X, Y, and Z to continue your benefits. In 2024, I submitted my information for my providers, and I was awarded the disability again. And as Scott brought up, part of the statute says that your employer is supposed to be contributing into your 401k, because we're defined contribution, not benefit. I was not receiving that as well. Scott brought that to my attention and did excellent work helping me navigate that process. But I didn't want to bring that up to the Division of Retirement and Disability Benefits for fear that they were not going, because if I caused a problem, my fear was that they were going to cancel my benefits and I wasn't going to be able to move forward. So I had to look at it, where do I want them to contribute, or do I want the monthly benefit for my service that I provided to the citizens of Anchorage. Ultimately, again, Scott did a tremendous work, and I looked at my Empower account, and there was a bolus of funds that did go in there. I don't know where they came from. I'm still trying to meet with Empower to figure that part out. And so through my experiences with working as a police officer, the traumas that I experienced, the traumatic brain injuries, and I won't go into every little call and every little detail in what I experienced. I do sit here today. I have a service dog that was provided to me by an organization out of St. Louis, Missouri called Got Your Six Support Dogs. That was a 1.5-year process in the making, and all of it has to do with my time and my work at the Anchorage Police Department. I guess one thing, if I could just share moving forward, instead of just coming here with problems, coming here with some solutions, my belief is that once you're deemed disabled by the state of Alaska, having an annual review makes it challenging, because doctors come and go, opinions come and go, and the amount of stress for re-upping, not knowing what the state is going to do. If you provide them the same documentation, are they going to allow it again or not? We don't know. My benefit was already canceled, or canceled one time, so who's to say it's not going to be canceled again? Also, my benefit is based on my last 12 months of employment, which at the time, I was on FMLA for 10 months of that, so that was 80% of my base salary. So my benefit is based on 40% of 80% of my base, which is not the salary that I was making while employed as a police officer serving the communities. Additionally, since our only retirement income is based on a 401k plan, I'm no longer able to contribute to that plan. Now, I was fortunate enough where I had 11 years on, so I was able to have some in there. But looking forward at other employees who may not have the time, who may only be on 3, 4, 5 years, they're not going to have basically anything in their 401k plan. The statute also reads that as public safety employees, so police and firefighters, we do have the benefit of a 25-year retirement. The detriment to that is in the disability realm. We also would only receive disability benefits up until 25 years, where any other state employee who is not a first responder receives benefits for 30 years. So they're cutting 5 years short for police and firefighters. So for example, my 25-year date is 2036. But somebody who started in 2011 who is not working in the capacity of law enforcement will get an additional 5 years of benefit. I think those are some solutions to help our first responders through this process. And I'm sure I'm leaving some stuff out. I want to thank you for your time, and I do hope that moving forward, the state of Alaska can address some of these concerns that we have. And I think that can help those that are currently serving and working and giving their lives to the citizens of Alaska every day, but also help recruit and retain future employees to the state. We have seen police departments throwing money at that problem, and it's only working to a small degree. But if we work on a benefit package and a medical package, that can allow for some definite recruitment possibilities and retention for long-term employees to serve the state. I think Rob is going to speak next, or unless you want Daniel to speak next. Again, thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to continuing this conversation and seeing what we can do to make this plan better and a more smooth process. The timing that they have on this takes forever, and I personally believe that there are other Tier 4 employees out there that just gave up. They were tired of the fight. They were tired of the battle. The paperwork is intense. It's a full-time job in and of itself to keep up on that paperwork. And I do see I don't know anybody, but I think that there's employees out there who just threw up their hands and walked away. But the three of us have recognized the problem. It's affecting us personally, but we also want to see growth for the state and growth for future employees. So again, thank you very much. Liam, are you ready to go?
Thank you very much.
Yep, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, hey there, my name is Liam Daniels. Just to give a little background on myself, I joined APD after serving 4 years in the Army. I joined in 2017 in the summer, got cut loose and went right to night patrol, which I worked for 5 years. I loved it. I was very happy to be working in that job. And on September 4th of 2021, which is actually my wife's birthday, I was heading into work and I heard another shift call out for a shooting call at an apartment complex nearby. And as I was driving into work, I decided to respond just to help out. And as I responded, I was able to locate the suspect of the shooting exiting an apartment complex. Went to go place him under arrest, and he ended up fighting with me. And while I was on the ground, another officer arrived holding an AR-15 and bent down to help me get the suspect into custody, and the suspect was able to get a hold of the other officer's rifle and pull the trigger and send off a round, which ended up hitting me square in the upper thigh. With that AR-15, it was a tap round, which is a round that kind of explodes when it enters a target. Immediately after that, I underwent 5 total surgeries here in Anchorage, just to try to save my life. I had both my arterial, my artery going down my leg, and then my major vein going back up toward my heart were severed. I was in the hospital for 3 weeks before I was finally discharged, and I was then on workers' comp for about 2 years. That whole time, just kind of like how Mike explained, for that 2 years, I was making only 80% of my pay of a 5-year officer at that time, which is, including in that, I lost out on any additional duties that were adding to my payments. So I was a field training officer, I was a negotiator, and I was working night shift, which adds toward the amount of money you make each paycheck, and I lost all of that, and I was just making 80% of a base pay for a 5-year officer for that time, which caused a lot of difficulties for me. I was 26 at the time I was shot. I'm 29 now. I have a fairly young family of now 4, and we were just trying to make it work off of that money. I had no idea what the other end looked like after I got hurt. I just assumed that it was similar to the military, where, if you get hurt, we're going to take care of you, and you won't have to worry about anything. But then I was all very suddenly having to worry about bills and how I was going to pay for bills with a significantly smaller paycheck. And then after about 2 years, I was flown around. During that 2 years, I was flown around to various hospitals down in Minnesota to attempt to fix the issues I was having in my leg, which turned out to be that my nerves were severed right at my quad, going down to my toes. And I had 3 nerve surgeries to try to repair that damage, all 3 which were unsuccessful. And then I ended up being sat down by my surgeon and basically explaining to me that I'll never be able to use my right leg fully again. And I hadn't been since I was shot. I just never got any feeling back, excuse me, for the bottom of my leg down toward my foot. And basically explained that if I was going to walk, it was going to need to be assisted somehow, either with a brace or a cane of some sort. And obviously I wouldn't ever be able to be a police officer again. The job of a police officer, the majority of it is running, wrestling with suspects, getting people contained, responding to emergency calls. And it was just unrealistic for me to do that again. So I ended up going back onto light duty with the police department, where they had me just sitting in an office by myself looking at video cameras, which just, it wasn't something that was gainful for me, and it just wasn't something that I was using any of the skills that I was taught as a police officer. It just, I was just being totally honest, I was struggling quite a bit with just watching the people I worked with go forth and conquer and serve the citizens of Anchorage and help defend the law in the city, and it was just difficult for me. And also knowing that I wasn't ever going to be able to return as a police officer. So the determination was made in October of last year that I was going to separate from the police department completely. And when I did that, I had started talking to the disability retirement and benefits folks, just trying to learn the process. Scott and Mike were both super helpful in explaining that to me, because again, I had no idea what the benefits looked like. I was never really explained what Tier 4 medical retirement benefits are or aren't. I just assumed that it's similar to the VA, where you get insurance and you get a certain amount of money because of the injury, and then you can go work a new job. And then come to find out that the requirements are extremely stringent, and there's no no medical benefit of any kind. And if I was to find a new job, number one, it can't be in the state's tier system in any way if you're going to receive that benefit. The reason I bring that up is because I was offered positions like a dispatcher or a records clerk. And if I was to accept those jobs, even with me losing my job as a police officer because of my injury, I would not receive any I would not receive any disability payments because it is in the Tier 4 system. So after leaving the police department, I really didn't know what I was going to do. I was kind of living on leave that I had sold when I had left the police department and paying for my own insurance. I heard Mike bring up the COBRA insurance. I ended up paying for that for a month just out of necessity because my wife was pregnant at the time and getting ready to give birth later in October when I ended up separating. And that was about $35 for my quote, which is just unrealistic, especially with no income. And then I ended up submitting my paperwork into the DRB, and just like Mike had mentioned, I was confused. I really didn't understand the system. There was a lot of rules, and I was trying to communicate back and forth with DRB, and it's extremely difficult to get a hold of those folks. There'd be times where I'd send an email and I wouldn't hear back for a month. And eventually I was able to talk to somebody there and explain my situation. And around that time, I was offered a position with the state troopers. It's called a long-term non-perm position. It doesn't come with any medical benefits or retirement benefits. It's not in the tier system. So that sounded like a perfect fit to me. Basically what I would be doing is just interviewing victims of child crimes, and that was all I would be doing. And I'd be able to use a little bit of the skills that I learned as a patrol officer, but it was basically completely brand new to me. I never worked detective work. I never did any crimes against children work. It was all completely new to me, and it wasn't in the Tier 4 system, so it seemed like a fit that I would be able to work that job and then receive disability benefits, and then I could use the 40% of my base salary, which I calculated out. It's really not that much money. I think it's about $25,000 a year total, and I would be able to use that to pay for health insurance for myself and my family. And I sent that all into DB with a job description, just explaining like no running, no jumping, no chasing bad guys anymore, which I physically can't do. So it's impossible. I walk with either like I said, a cane or a brace to get around, or crutches if I need to. And ended up accepting that position as a child investigator. And one of the managers at the DRB sent me an email informing me that in the event that I was approved for disability, that I would be required to terminate the job I ended up finding because they felt that what I was doing now was too similar to a patrol officer. I sent them an email back as well as a few of the lieutenants at the troopers, just explaining how different patrol work is to what I'm doing, which is sitting at a desk and then occasionally going to a hospital for an interview and then going back and sitting at a desk. Like I can't get up and run if I wanted to. There's no driving fast. There's no chasing. There's no anything. And the folks over at DRB affirmed that if I am approved a disability benefit, that number one, just like Scott and Mike had mentioned, there's no health insurance, and I would be required to quit this job. And then if I didn't, I don't know what would happen. They won't explain it to me. I've asked them a few times, but I'm assuming that my benefit ends, and then I'm just basically I'm trying to, for lack of a better term, I was crippled at 26, and then it's just I get nothing. Basically, is how it was explained to me. And as far as the DRB process for me now is, I sent in all my documents, and I was told that it's going to be a few months before they even make any sort of determination for me. And with how difficult it is to get concrete responses from them, I have concerns that if it is approved, they're just going to send me a letter saying that you've been approved and then immediately denied because you've been working a job that we feel is similar, even when I tried to explain to them that it's completely different to patrol officer work. And the reason I feel like that is just I can't get a firm answer from them on any questions I have pertaining to disability. It's all very cryptic, and they'll say, we'll see once we get to that point, which is difficult for me. As I said, with my family, I need to be able to plan ahead in some capacity, and they're not willing to assist me in doing that. So that's where I'm at now. As far as solutions, I honestly think that the two requirements that are in there, it can't be a Tier 4 position, and it can't be a job that they feel is too similar to your previous position. Number one, I feel like it's wrong to allow somebody who has never worked as a first responder in any capacity to be able to make that determination that they feel two jobs are similar. It seems very subjective, and it's just up to whoever looks at it, whether they decide if your new job is too similar. I would like to see it to just be or injured and determined not to be able to return to your same job, that it would just be a regular payment similar to the VA. And obviously I would like to see some form of health insurance. I think that would be huge for me, because right now I'm paying for my own health insurance, which is relatively expensive. And that's really where I'm at as far as my situation currently with state disability. I'm really hoping to see some sort of change or something with it.
Thank you very much for sharing that.
All right, I guess I'm coming up next here. My name's Robert Teeling. Became an Alaska State Trooper in February of 2018. It had been a lifelong dream of mine to become a law enforcement officer in the state of Alaska. I was a little bit older when that dream came to fruition. Then in October of 2022, I was working as a trooper up in Glen Allen, responded to a call in where I was stabbed in the head by a suspect. I ended up getting a brain injury as a result of that. Was in the workman's comp system for, I'm still technically in the workman's comp system, but I basically tried to navigate the system as much as I could with the capacity that I had. Dealing with that stuff with the brain injury is difficult in and of itself, and there's really nobody there that was willing to help. Like Scott, I reached out to the union. I had the union say it wasn't a union, it wasn't anything to do with the union. I reached out to the troopers and DPS and basically said that's retirement benefits. Like Scott, I eventually reached my what they call I don't know if it's the 1 year mark or whatever it was, but they, without telling me, started pulling my personal leave to make up for whatever it was that workman's comp wasn't paying them. And once I found that out, I raised a bit of a complaint, and the union at that point did write a letter of agreement allowing me another few months that I was able to receive my pay without having basically paying myself to not work with my own personal leave that I'd earned. I tried my hardest to do everything in my power to go to every treatment that was available to me, which was oftentimes 5 days a week, between vestibular therapy, cognitive therapy, vision therapy, counseling, etc. I had 2 independent medical exams, and then another independent medical exam that Workman's Comp decided not to call an independent medical exam, so I've actually had probably 3 of them now at this point, which they all say the same, that I have a brain injury, and they also diagnosed me with PTSD as a result of the brain injury, depression and anxiety as well. And it's not just cognitive things that mine is disrupted. I'm on pills for different various things for my autonomic nervous system to function. I went through a series in September of about 24 total shots in my neck to try to give me some sort of normalcy, and there's no promise as to how long that works. It did work for a while. I do feel that there are some symptoms that are flaring back up, so I have no idea how long that's going to take. I, unlike some of these other guys, was not cleared to go back to light duty work. And why I bring that up is because if you go back to light duty work, despite the fact that you're still broken, workman's comp can pretty much cut you off at that point, which did happen to another trooper who's not online with us right now. He wasn't able to make it, but another trooper who was shot up in Fairbanks was basically pressured into going back to light duty. Once he did, they dropped him from workman's comp, and then he was later told that he was no longer eligible to be a law enforcement officer. And because workman's comp had dropped him, since he had been cleared to go back to light duty work, he was receiving nothing from them. It took him almost 7 months to get his first paycheck from disability. He was, I think, one of the first of the DPS guys in Tier 4 to go through that. In the process, he ended up losing his house as a result. Couldn't pay his bills. He had to sell it early and move into a smaller apartment with his family. I guess you could say lucky for him, his wife, through the Native Corporation, has medical benefits. But as soon as I was dropped in May of 1st, 2024, they allowed us to stay on until May 1st so that my wife and I could keep our medical benefits to the end of the month. And then I was offered COBRA, which for my wife and I believe was close to $2,700 a month, which is completely unreasonable. Interestingly enough, my disability after it was cleared was actually more than Scott's, Lanier's, even though he's a 14-year Alaska State Trooper. Mine was a few $100s more for whatever reason. I was stationed out of Glen Allen. However, even the percentage rate on that doesn't quite make sense on how they processed his. And that's kind of what the other guys are saying too, is you get somebody saying one thing and another person saying another thing. Nobody seems to know exactly how it works, why it works. And when you do get whatever it is, it's almost like they kind of expect us just to bow down and thank them for the fact that they gave us anything. That's the way that I kind of felt about it. Like Scott, I didn't even know that they were supposed to be continuing to put into our defined benefits, into our 401k. And I think Scott, he worked that all out. Eventually, I got a random email from Department of Retirement Benefits saying, hey, by the way, Scott fixed this for you. So thank you, Scott, which I've already thanked him before, but, on record here. Yeah, it just seems like nobody really knows what's going on. The union doesn't want to have anything to do with it. DPS didn't really want to have anything to do with it. In fact, I remember at the academy I had asked, what happens to us if we get hurt? And we were just told medical retirement. And today, even if you were to ask any of the other guys, some of them even swear that there's medical retirement and that the things that Scott and I are getting must be the best things in the world, and we're just complaining. And they just won't even believe the fact that there's nothing. They don't want to believe it. There's a lot of people, even in our command staff, that really doesn't want to believe that nothing happens. I was told by some pretty high-up people in the troopers, we've never knew this before. We're going to do everything we can to fix it. But that's pretty much the last that we've heard from that. I've reached out to legislators who all have, I've met with 3. And was basically told, we didn't know this was going to be. It's going to be our number one priority to go into this. And as soon as I reach out to them now, I haven't heard back from one of them since that was like all about helping us out and hearing everything. I haven't heard from her since October 2024. The other one, as soon as he was elected, haven't really heard anything back from him as well. So it seems like nobody knows about this. Everybody wants to help, but then when push comes to shove, everybody just kind of buries their head in the sand and decides that this is not their number one priority. I know that there's more guys out there that I've talked to that have basically just given up on the system. I do know a few specifically that are, and I'm trying to get them in contact with injured workers advocate for the state. But it's a long process. And, once workman's comp deems that you're done, they're just done with you. And so even though I still am getting some help from them. There's things that I get often in the mail that say, talk to your lawyer about this. Well, I talk to a lawyer and they say, well, you're not eligible to have a lawyer because you're not controverted. So there's these medical legal things that I'm supposed to be making decisions on for the rest of my life that I'm not even allowed to talk to an attorney about. And like Scott said, that workman's comp system is a different animal that we can talk about at another time. But either way, when you're injured in the line of duty as a cop or as a first responder in the state, there's really no help for you. The union doesn't want to help you. Your agency doesn't want to help you. The state doesn't want to help you. The disabilities, they look at their manuals and say, oh, well, we've got a Tier 3 manual, but they don't even have a Tier 4 manual. And then everybody just kind of expects you to just sit back and take whatever they give you. And like Mike and Scott said, every single year without medical, we are required to continue to do our due diligence of getting our medical paperwork together. And like Mike said, providers leave, providers quit, providers move on. And the stress of bringing multiple years worth of I know when I had to get my paperwork together to possibly get a lawyer, it took I had a OT that was able to help me because I wasn't able to navigate the system myself. It just was too overwhelming for me to even be on the computer that long, let alone reach out to all the doctors and everything. But they all want multiple copies of this and that and the other, and every time you change or move to another doctor, they require all those paperwork. So, the reality of taking years and years and years worth of medical documents every year to another provider, if your provider is no longer there, and have them read through it, and then they have to write the paper and do the states jump through the hoops to send that information off and say, oh, this individual can't be a cop anymore, or this individual can't be a firefighter anymore for whatever reason. And then that paper has to go to a committee, and then that committee looks at it. And then all of a sudden you get a paper in the mail, almost like, congratulations, you're broken, but here you go. Here's some more money for another year. And one of the difficult things that people don't often look at is that, some of us, we might have the ability to do another job or work something to make a little extra cash on the side after the disability, but there's going to be guys and there's going to be gals that are injured that won't be able to. As a state employee, we're not eligible for Social Security benefits. We're not eligible for Social Security medical or Medicare or whatever it is, Medicaid, Medicare. We're not eligible for that because the state has opted to not put into those programs. So what we get, and the sole thing that we get, is a state disability. That's it. We can't apply for Social Security. If we're too broken to not work, whatever they tell us is what we're going to get for the next 25 years from our start date. That's what we get. We don't get the raises that come when the troopers get a raise or the Acreage Police Department get a raise. Our benefits aren't based off of the salary that we could have been making. It's based off the salary 15, 20 years ago. And as we all know, as we've all seen inflation, that's not, I'm making less money now than, from disability than, a Wendy's worker. And then they're saying, no, we like Mr. Daniels was saying that, you can't do a job that even is remotely close to being a cop. Currently, right now, the state rehabilitation is trying to get me to rehab into being a personal or private investigator. Well, my doctors have all said they don't want me testifying in court and they don't want me to be going through those kind of stresses. But they're trying to pressure me into it, saying, well, you were closest in this, so we're going to try to train you to this. And I've explained to them, if you try to do that, I won't be able to do these testifying in court, and it's too close in relation to my previous position, and so then I'll lose the small amount of disability that I already get. But it just seems like the entire system is almost rigged so that you will never get any farther than you are. After you've given your life, your limb, or whatever it might be to the state of Alaska, to the municipality of Anchorage, you're just expected to take whatever minuscule wages that they want to give you and then be happy with it. I know that I'm even dealing with some things right now that previous injuries that I had as a law enforcement officer, but I can't even go get them taken care of because our department was very, very stringent on the fact that they didn't really want us to report the fact if we got injured or doing something. So none of those things are on workman's comp. So now I'm having to deal with all those kind of things myself without medical. So some of the things like, some solutions that I think that could possibly be beneficial to this is again, not having to reapply every single year for disability. You can't get a loan. You can't get a loan even to verify income if you're on disability. They straight told me. They said, well, this is only good for a year, so you're not. I can't even go get a loan to get another house. I can't get a loan to get a car. I have no verifiable income, even though that I'm making whatever the state's given me, but they won't verify it because it's on a yearly basis. People don't take that into consideration. The ability to continue, even if we were to be able to pay the same premiums that we paid as a law enforcement officer. I talked to someone in our union and I said, the more people that you have in the medical system is going to drive your prices down so that you can get a better rate. And they agreed with me. But the state still doesn't offer any sort of medical that we can get except for that $2,700 a month COBRA, which pretty much wipes out your disability check if you tried to get that. The other thing I would think is like what you heard from Mike and Scott, is that they based their 40% off of their previous 4 months or previous year. I know that when I was a trooper, the last few years that I worked, I made significantly more than what they based it. And I was a swing shift troop. You get your little perks for whatever it is. I know that Scott had a lot of perks because he was a pilot. He was on CERT for a number of years. He had all sorts of different things that added into his paycheck, but you're not eligible for that when you base it off of your 40%. I think that a good solution to that would be is to look at the employees' previous 3 years prior to their injury and base their 40% off the average of that. And that's not really that unheard of, because with Tier 3 retirement and Tier 2 retirement, a lot of times they would go with their last high 3 to base their full retirement on, which is why you had a lot of employees at the time trying to get out into the bush communities because they knew they'd make more money, and they'd go they'd go for 3 years, 15, 16, 18 years in their career so they could boost up their retirement wage, and then they could retire off of those high 3. Why don't they give the same to injured guys? Because eventually somebody's going to get injured again, and somebody's going to get to the point where they can't work at all, and they're going to be expected to have them and their family live off of the meager wages that they've determined that you're eligible to get. Meanwhile, the recruitment videos for the state are talking about how much money they pay you as an Alaska State Trooper. Look at all this money that you're going to make if you go out in these bush communities. But what they don't tell you is that as soon as you get hurt in one of those bush communities, they're just going to drop you like you're nothing. You're just going to, the blue line is going to continue onward. The machine's going to continue onward with or without you. And you're told that your entire career. And then you get injured and you realize what that means. They are going to go, and you're pretty much going to get forgotten about. I know that I can testify to say that out of all the people that I knew as a trooper, pretty much the guys that you currently see on the screen are the ones that contact me. So yeah, the machine moves forward, and we're kind of left to figure it out. That's kind of what I have. My main kind of thing on this is the medical insurance, the possibility to, maybe you do 2 years of proving that you still can't be a cop, and then after that you're just grandfathered in until the remaining of your time. And then also, like Scott said, with the 30 years for any other employee except for law enforcement. It's like, okay, great, you allow us to retire 25 years, but that also means you lose your medical benefits 5 years before, say, the clerk in your same office that may have slipped on the ice when she was doing some task for the department when she walked outside, or he walked outside. So those are kind of some of the things that I've struggled with, and kind of some of the solutions that I've talked to these guys about. And I think that not only is it fair, I think it's the right thing to do as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, sir, this is Scott Lanier again. I can attest to what Rob was just saying about the being in remote communities prior to the injury. Prior to the injury in 2019, I was a sergeant in King Salmon for the Alaska Wildlife Troopers, and So the year prior to my actual injury, I was making well over what a normal trooper in the Matson Valley or anything was making, and I'll be willing to say I was making $180,000 to $190,000 a year in that remote community. When I moved into town, that's when I got hurt, and I lost that ability to make that money based on the injury. That injury, I had surgery. I was off for 6 months. I went back to work and continued doing my job. That lasted for about a year and a half. The injury failed, so I had it repaired again. Was off for 6 months. Was then back to work again, back to full duty, doing the job of a trooper again. And that lasted 6 months, and then that's when I ultimately had to have my ankle replaced due to that injury, which is what ultimately took me out of the career. So the thing that they're saying about, and like I said, in my case, I was only given 4 months of service to calculate that 40%. So I'm in agreement with the guys about, taking like a 3-year average or something like that, because the way that the system works right now is your disability calculation is based on not the fact that you were working, it's the fact that you were making the 80% of your salary on workman's comp. That just doesn't seem even remotely fair, because having that salary, you base your life on living that salary, and we try to live within our means, and then that's taken from you, and now I've already committed to those payments and that kind of thing. So now I have to rebase my whole budget and rebase my whole livelihood off something that I wasn't even remotely calculating. So that, and then like they also said, I'll just say that I was, being a single guy, I was my retirement or my medical benefit through Cobra was going to be $1,700 a month, and that's even as a single guy. So therefore, like, luckily I have the VA, so at least I have something to fall back on for medical. But I mean, they wanted to take 50% of my disability payment per month just so that I would have like a medical insurance base. I just can't see that being feasible. So I'm in agreement with the other guys about, the other side of it is just to put it in perspective. So as a Tier 4 employee, I'm eligible for medical once I hit my 25 years, but I'm not eligible for it being disabled. So therefore, I have an 11-year hole that I have to cover my own medical for, and then once I hit my 25 years and I stop taking the disability payment, then I'm eligible to buy my insurance like I was still employed as a trooper because I'm retired. So, like, just the aspect of our employees are putting themselves at risk every day to protect the citizens of Alaska, and then not being afforded, and they lose that career due to being injured, and then not having any kind of medical until they hit their 25 years. I mean, that seems a little bit wrong to me. But like I said, those are some of the easy solutions that I would suggest. But I mean, we could go down this road for the next 3 hours, and I'm sure we could all just chime in on our solutions on how we think it should be. But just the aspect of how we were treated by the disability section. So, like, if I called the state of Alaska retirement and benefits section, which I've called multiple times to try to get help to get all this stuff started, because I really advocated, I really fought for my the things that I thought we should be getting, as these guys just attested to. But when it came down to it, we were all told something different. We were all told like, I was just asking for manuals. Hey, can I see the manual that you guys are referring to? And I was told that, well, the manuals are wrong. Like, multiple times I was told that the manual was wrong, but they still wouldn't provide the manual for me to actually do the research myself. I mean, but when I called the Department of Retirement and Benefits to ask about the employee contributions, I was told, we can't talk to you because you're no longer an employee with the state of Alaska and you're technically not retired. And to me, that seems like, well, who am I supposed to talk to? And that's why I said the only people that I was allowed to talk to was the retirement and disability section. But it was hard for me to take that I couldn't go out and talk to people who needed to hear this. Like, I wanted to share my story with legislators. I wanted to share my story with the governor's office, because I don't believe that the governor would be very happy when he hears that this is how his disabled troopers are being handled. I mean, if I was the governor, I would be embarrassed that that's how my law enforcement and first responders were being treated. So, you know, I'm willing to stand up in front of God and everybody and tell my story about how it was and how the system, I believe, failed me in the long run. But I still put up the fight to get these guys what they were entitled, and get these guys so they could at least have something. And I think all these guys will tell you that I did a lot of the legwork on a lot of this. So I'm willing to stand up in front of God and everybody and tell my story so that we can get it fixed for the people who are coming. Because as it sits right now, there is no benefit for some person that works for the state of Alaska to put themselves at risk to protect the citizens of Alaska. And I'll just leave it at that, sir. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today, and I appreciate you putting this together.
Absolutely. Thank you. We're still on the idea of recommendations. So I'm open ears for any other recommendations you want to put out there. I'll take them down. We'll add them to the list.
It's Michael O'Connor here. I also wanted to add to that the four of us here online today, we knew of each other as we worked, but what brought us together was our experiences in dealing with this whole process. I didn't know Rob. I knew Scott from prior work things, but it was, even though Liam worked for the Anchorage Police Department, we never worked together. But it was through our struggles and challenges that we have come together, and we want to fix this moving forward. And I can probably speak for the other three guys on the line here. We loved what we did. We loved it, and we were good at it. And if we could give it all back, we'd still be working. We want to work. We're not here asking for a handout. Like, we gave it our all every day that we went to work. We left our families, we left our friends, we went out in the dark, we worked the streets, and we were injured in doing that. And the four of us testifying today were injured while trying to apprehend violent offenders. Some of us injured multiple times with these traumatic brain injuries. Who knows what the future holds for those? My speech has changed since my head injury. My thought process, my cognitive abilities have changed. And one thing that the state is doing with this is, okay, fine. If this is how that process works, perhaps I'll stay at work, but now I'm a liability. Now I'm not making the right decisions. And so I think that we can come to some solutions that make the state of Alaska happy and make its employees happy. And speaking of the solutions, I do agree with what Rob and Scott have said. So I don't have any additional thoughts, because I think that is a viable solution to the problem that the state employees are facing. Mr. Eastman, thank you again very much for setting this up. I look forward to, again, continuing this process. I am available. I'm passionate about it. I want to help our first responders. And I'll close myself with that.
I'd like to add another solution. This is Scott Lanier again. A solution that might be something that helps out people that might be going through this in the future would be having some sort of advocate that explains the process to them. The aspect of the union not helping us, the state not helping us, the department not helping us, like, where do we get all this information that we're supposed to make all these decisions off of? So having somebody to explain it to us, somebody that's even knowledgeable about it, because in all reality, the aspect that I look at, the people that are supposed to be the professionals in this with retirement and benefits disability section, like, I was given wrong information so many times that I would then find in a manual and be like, hey, this doesn't sound with what you're saying. And then they'll be like, oh yeah, we were mistaken on that, or the manual's wrong. I said, could you at least repair the manual or make the manual current? And they said, well, that's just not how we do things. So, like, they're putting out wrong information. So having somebody that can advocate for us or at least explain it to us as we make these decisions would be awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and second that with what Scott just said. You know, especially in law enforcement and first responders, we pretty much have a manual for everything. There's a standard operating procedure. And Mr. Eastman, I know that you actually worked with you at one point with the water rescue team for the Mat-Su Borough, and we had manuals on how things go. We had manuals on how to take care of vehicles. We had manuals on how to take care of dive gear. We had manuals on taking care of boats, the motors, and everything in between. And as a cop, the same thing. We have manuals on how to handle domestic violence calls. We have manuals on how to do evading suspects and arresting suspects. We have all sorts of different things that tell us exactly how to do things almost to the T. And you can guarantee that if you mess one of those things up, someone's going to come down the line and get you for it. You know, or you're going to have a period of instruction on how to do it better the next time. So I feel like the fact that yeah, there's not anybody that really knows anything about this. We pretty much all had to go through it together, but apart. Even with our HR, you know, everybody has different experiences with people, but you know, I had a fairly positive experience with our HR. And I remember her calling me one time, and she just said, "I can't believe that there's nothing for you. There's crap for you guys on what you get if something happens to you." That was coming from our head of HR, and she didn't even know what had happened. Our commissioner at the time, our colonel at the time, didn't know. So you know, it's if we have manuals for everything else, why can't we have a manual that walks you through what happens when you get injured on the job? And I think maybe that might be a little bit different, and that might be more of a per department, per municipal thing on how to deal with things when you get injured. But there should be something that the state provides, especially after since you know, hey, so you were injured on the job. Here's a list of things that you should be doing and who should you be contacting. I feel like that's something that should be a fairly simple thing to put together if the legislation is there. And, you know, I know for certain there's not enough people retiring every single day that they wouldn't be able to have that as a part of a task for somebody that's already even currently working. But that's my opinion on it. I don't know. I don't make budgets. I don't do anything like that. I just know that pretty much for everything that I've ever done in my careers, somebody's had a manual or a piece of paper or a letter of instruction that taught me how to do it. So why is it that the four of us all had different experiences and had different things told to us, and different things happened to us, and our pay is even based off of different things that nobody seems to know how we were paid. And so yeah, with that, I just think that you know, I'm available if anybody needs that has any questions or you know, wants to go any further into this later on down the line. I know this is recorded. It looks like we have an outstanding turnout right now, but hopefully there's other people that will listen and hear this, and if they do want to reach out to us, I think all of us are willing to give our 2 cents on how to make things better. You know, probably not for us, but at least for the folks that are coming up behind us, I know I'm willing to be an advocate for any of them as well. Thank you.
And this is Liam Daniels again. Just kind of going off that manual portion that the other guys were talking about. Just actual definitions would be extremely helpful for I know it would have been helpful for me when I was going through the process. When I would reach out to the retirement benefits folks, I would ask them, like, hey, I have to get another job. I can't live off of this amount of money. How does the rehiring process work? And I still haven't gotten an answer on that. I have no idea. With me taking this new job, I don't know what any outcome would look like if I was approved for disability, if I would be given time to look for a new job, if I would be forced to quit immediately, if they're just going to flat out deny my benefit right out of the gate. I have no idea. I've reached out and asked these questions to DRB, and I don't get any firm answer. All I'm told is and I'm also told, excuse me, let me back up a little bit. As far as definitions, what would be helpful too is the DRB, when I reached out to them and explained to them the job I was looking for or looking at taking, they wrote me back and explained that we don't pre-certify employment, and what you're required to do is to take a job and then send them to the description of the job. They make the determination if it's okay or not based on, I don't know who makes that call. I've never gotten an answer on who makes the decision on if it's too similar or if they feel like the skills and abilities are too similar, or I have no idea. I can't get an answer from anybody. I get very limited response from DRB when it comes to rehiring, which based on our benefits that are available right now, you have to get another job. It's impossible to live off of that even as a single person. And it was something that's that important in the process, having an actual definition of what skills and abilities are would be huge. Or honestly, my recommendation would just be to get rid of that altogether, because like the other folks have said here, none of us are able to return to the job we had before. I'll never be a patrol officer again. If I could go back to the day I got shot, I would do it all differently so I didn't get hurt, so I could keep working it again because I loved it so much. But that's not how the world works. And we're just given this cryptic description of skills and abilities for a job position, and somebody in Juneau makes that call who you'll never meet and has no grasp of what a police officer does, what a firefighter does, what any first responder does, and they get to make the call whether your new job is similar to your old job, and I just think that's ridiculous in my opinion, because like I said, I wear a brace or I walk with a cane. It's pretty obvious that I'm not going to be a cop again. But then I get word from the folks at DRB that they feel that two jobs are too similar. So I don't know if they plan on denying it. I honestly don't know. Like I said, I can't get an answer from DRB. It's almost impossible for me to get any information from them. I just get resent the statutes over and over again, which don't answer my question. And that's all I have. And I appreciate you for giving us a space to talk here.
Yeah, thank you. Some questions come to mind, but feel free to interject along the way. I guess the first question, just to get your candid response. The information that you got when you were being hired for your positions, was that accurate about situations like you experienced further down the line?
I'll jump in. This is Scott Lanier. It was never brought to anybody's attention about what happens if you're injured in the line of duty. Coming out of the military, I assumed, like Liam, that it was going to be something similar to that, where if I'm hurt in the line of duty or killed in the line of duty, my family would be taken care of, or I would be taken care of for the rest of my life. I think it was just an assumption, but it had never been brought up into my career until I actually had been injured. and then I started asking questions, and then that's when it came enlightening to me about how bad it really is if you get hurt in the line of duty. So I started kind of advocating to other people like, hey, do you realize that if you're hurt in the line of duty, that this is what's going to happen? Because I did a bunch of this research while in between surgeries, because I had to make a determination on which surgery I have. One that's better for me in the long run, or one that's got a chance to put me in the career or keep me in the career. And I ultimately had to make the decision to take the surgery that would help me out personally in the long run and leave the career. So yeah, it had never been brought up, but I had started to bring it up after.
And I think somebody in my academy, I'm not sure who it was, it may have been myself, I'm not sure, but that question was asked at the academy, what happens if we get hurt? And I remember it was simply just said medical retirement, and it was kind of left at that. And I'm still pretty good friends with most of the corporals or those who were corporals at the academy when I went through, and that's what they were told. And you know, when you hear something from the guy up from you or the person that was in charge of you before, that's what happens, and maybe they heard it from that person, maybe they heard it from somebody else. It may have all come down from a tier 1 or a tier 2 guy that just slowly got passed down the line at the academy, and everybody just heard the same thing, medical retirement, and nobody really knew what that was. But because it was brought to their, you know, that's what, when they asked, that's what they were told, that's what they, you know, regurgitated to everybody else because that's what they heard. And I think that that's kind of like maybe a little bit of a game of phone tag that's happened maybe not just our department but across the state, that possibly somebody from tier 1 or tier 2, there was maybe a medical retirement that was pretty decent if you were injured on the job, and it just slowly got passed down and just nobody knows, you know, because everybody's just kind of concerned with what tier they're at, and you can't fault them for that. I do think that once you get into a position in headquarters, that you probably should know a little bit about what your guys and gals are working under. That's my opinion. That's not obviously what happens. But yeah, I think it was given to us, the facts were given to us with what the individuals that we asked knew.
I can attest to that really quick. Just give me 1 second, Mike. I'll be really quick. But on that same chart that I referenced earlier in my talk, sir, where it says the difference between tier 4 and tier 3 disabilities. So for tier 1, 2, and 3, what it defines is non-occupational disability benefits are calculated as a normal retirement. Occupational disability provides 40% of the gross monthly compensation. So I think that's the disconnect, because they're not given an end date in that tier 3, tier 2, tier 1 thing. So it actually kind of feels more like a medical retirement, because you can get that monthly compensation basically for life, right? The difference is once it comes into the tier 4 thing, that's when it actually has an end date, and that's at your 25 years of service. So I think that might be a little bit of the disconnect that Rob's talking about.
And to touch on my experience, to touch on my experience, I can't recall specifically about disability retirement and what that looked like. The conversations were about tier 4 versus tier 3 in regards to defined benefit versus defined contribution, and that's the focus of the conversation. I came from to the Anchorage Police Department from the federal government as a special agent for them, and so I carefully looked and explored what it was going to be like leaving a defined benefit agency to come to a defined contribution. I did look at medical, but when you're getting involved in this career, and you know, I'll take responsibility, you don't necessarily always go right to, well, what happens when I get hurt doing this? You're too excited to get started, too excited to learn, too excited to get out there. And perhaps for me, there was just some expectation that if an injury were to occur, that I would have been taken care of. So part of it too is at the time that Scott and I got on, most of the leadership positions were in the tier 3 category. So they weren't paying attention to tier 4. They couldn't answer any questions about tier 4. Now perhaps that's shifted a little bit as time has gone on, and there's now more tier 4 people in leadership roles. But getting on earlier on, there just weren't those conversations because nobody understood what Tier 4 was. And that chart that Scott's talking about, it's 2 lines for Tier 1, 2, and 3, and it's an entire block of convoluted mess on what happens with Tier 4. Difficult to read, difficult to understand, and now navigating this system after a TBI makes it all the more difficult. So that's my recollection, that there wasn't specific discussion about it, more like, you should be happy to be here, let's go to work kind of thing. Yes, sir, let's go. And so perhaps sharing that information up front. And again, part of what I see in law enforcement nationwide is, again, throwing money at these problems and recruitment incentives and all of this. Well, how about throwing money at retention and taking care of the people? Because you won't need to recruit because people are going to stay longer with that support system in place. Thankfully, the Anchorage Police Department and the Alaska State Troopers, they do pay well. I don't think anybody would argue that. And you're able, if you're paying attention, you're able to fund the 401k through the employer match, and that's all right. But when it comes time to, now I can't contribute to that anymore. The day that I was done due to injury is what I get. Hearing Liam's story, my heart goes out to him. He was on 5 years. He was 26 years old when he had to leave APD. He can't contribute to that anymore. So at 25, if he gets the disability, again, the big if, for each year now until he hits 25, if he gets that, once he hits 25, all he has in that 401k from his injury is the 5 years of whatever he was able to invest as an entry-level employee, and it makes it extremely challenging and makes you feel like you're just a number when we were out there doing everything we could to keep ourselves safe as well as everybody else.
Absolutely. Liam, what was it like for you?
Are you able to hear me?
Go ahead.
Yeah, we got you, Liam. Yeah, we got you.
Yeah, I don't remember who mentioned it, but when I was going through the academy, I think all my instructors were Tier 3, I believe. So I remember somebody asking the question at some point, and the answer was medical retirement. And after I got hurt, I ended up, touching base with a couple of my buddies after they would get off of work, and they would mention it to me too, like, oh, well, like, this is a terrible thing that happened, but at least you get medical retirement. And then I was the one that actually told them what the process actually looks like. And I only learned that after I got hurt, when I had asked the union president at the time, and he explained it to me. And I think the other folks here have also mentioned, and I reached out for help with this process through the union, and I was told it wasn't a contract issue, so they would be able to help me. But yeah, it's very, very similar. I was told it was a medical retirement, and then I was rudely awakened after I spoke to my union president after I got hurt.
Thank you. Scott, you might have the answer to this question, but what is the difference between the process you all just experienced and described to me, and if you had a trooper who was shot and killed in the line of duty, and what happens to their family after that?
Well, so I know I have the knowledge on this just based on some other legislation that went through, but back in 2013, the troopers lost Trooper Tage Toll and Pilot Mel Nading, and then in 2014 we lost Sergeant Scott Johnson and Trooper Gabe Rich. There was a bunch of legislation that went through because of the fight that Scott Johnson's wife had went through to get medical benefits for their family, because they were cut off right then. So they ultimately got that approved so that they had medical benefits. I think it was only for like 10 years. So like, there's a big disconnect. I mean, if you're shot and killed in the line of duty, or or lost in a plane crash or whatever, your family is cut off. That has been changed, so now it's 10 years. But I don't know exactly how that works right off the bat for like other things, but we can get that information, and I'm very sure that Scott Johnson's wife would be willing to answer those questions for us directly if we need it. I can probably make that happen.
Sure, thank you. And when you say medical for 10 years, are you talking about access to be able to pay for premiums to get medical, or is that medical covered completely by the state?
That I'm not 100% sure on, sir, but they did get medical insurance for their family, so for his wife and daughters. And I don't know if they had to pay for that or not, but we could get those answers fairly easy.
So just real quick, I've got the PERS Employer Manual dated 2020 up currently. And it says if a member dies due to an occupational reason, the survivor will receive 40% of the member's gross monthly salary at the time of death, or 50% of the member's gross monthly salary as a peace officer or firefighter. Survivors include spouse-dependent children. Survivors who are receiving monthly benefits are not eligible for medical benefits until the member would have met the eligibility requirements for normal retirement benefits had they have lived.
And Scott, I think that actually for Johnson's wife, I think that was actually a letter of agreement that our union actually set forth that so she could continue on, and I think they worked something like that out with the state. I'm not sure exactly how it happened either, but I do believe that was kind of a special thing that was put in place for her.
Yeah. So
it was something that was special put in place, but I thought it got carried on for other people. But like I said, we could easily get that information if that's what if we need to.
Thank you. I'm just trying to figure out how to best educate those who are interested in coming and being hired and working in public safety and their families on what is actually going to happen. What's going to happen if you die in the line of duty? What's going to happen if you get injured? What's going to happen if you get injured and then you get rehired? Some of the situations that you've experienced, and I'm sure other situations out there that you haven't experienced, but also would be good for people to know about.
Yes, sir. So in regards to the medical insurance that we're speaking about, I don't think any of us are asking for anything for free. At least in my case, like if I just had, because the way that the system works for me and most of these guys here is that I'm eligible for it because I did 10 years of service. So after 10 years of service, you're eligible for retirement or medical benefits at your retirement age at 25 years, right? So then I would start paying what I was paying while I was employed as a trooper, right? So the thing that I'm asking for medical for us right now is give us the ability to pay what we were paying for as a trooper to get us until we hit our 25 years. So I'm not asking for a free lunch here. I'm just asking for the ability to buy in and not pay $1,700 a month, because I can guarantee you that I wasn't paying anywhere near $1,700 a month for insurance while I was employed as a trooper. I'm just asking for that to continue on until I hit my retirement age, like I'm eligible for once I hit my retirement age.
Yeah, no, I understand completely. Well, we've got a few more minutes. Is there anything else that hasn't been said that's worth bringing up and getting on the record?
I would just ask that if you have any more questions to ask us, that would be fantastic to clarify things.
One of the things that I wasn't completely clear about is at what point are you supposed to apply to re-up your annual benefit? Like if you get approved January 1st, do you then start applying in September in order to get the paperwork ready so that you can get reapproved for the next January 1st, or how does that work or not work?
So they sent me an email reminding me that I have to send that stuff in, usually about 45 days before the closure. So For me, it's a November date, so in the end of October, beginning of November, I can start getting that stuff into them for approval for the following year.
Yeah, that's
And
my understanding as well, sir. My anniversary date would be May 1st when I started receiving disability, so I have to get everything together in April, and I've actually just scheduled my appointment with my with my care provider for my injury, so that I can pay out of pocket for that visit, so that they can fill out the appropriate paperwork, so that I can submit it to the state on my anniversary date.
Mm-hmm. All right, so you have some paperwork you may start filling out before your anniversary date. You get at least one doctor's appointment to, get a doctor's note. Are there some other steps involved there? And then how long do they tell you to expect that process to take once you turn in all the paperwork?
because there's not, it appears that there are not very many of us out there, the turnaround doesn't take very long. And so this year, because I did have medical insurance and I was able to maintain the care that I needed, I was able to get that into them pretty quickly. And the turnaround was just a couple of weeks. But during that couple of weeks, I'm sitting here biting nails, not knowing what's going to happen. And like I said before, I had to get a job to get insurance so I could then start getting a doctor to continue this disability. And the pay I receive now is absolutely nowhere near what I was making as a police officer. And so I rely on that income just to get by. And it causes a lot of undue stress, because you don't know who's going to be down there approving or what criteria they're going to look at, or whatnot. I don't see the 24. So I think they got it to me in a couple of weeks this year. It didn't take very long. But again, it doesn't say, like, I can't go to the doctor in January and submit that in November. But there is no clear line on how often you have to meet. And everybody's disability is going to be different, right? So with traumatic brain injuries, I may not have to meet with my doctor on a weekly basis. I meet with a psychologist now that I have insurance on a biweekly basis. But at what point is that going to be too stale of information to supply to disability? And you won't know until you've passed your deadline and they get back to you and say, yeah, that's not good enough, we need a more current doctor note. And so now you're going to be a month without disability or two, and then are they going to say, yeah, that's good, or no, that's not good?
Yeah, so mine is just coming up, and I'm getting ready to do it. I'm also haven't worked since I left state service in April, and I have a job that I'm supposed to start in April. So I'm hoping that for some reason they don't deny me for some reason. But it's the way it was explained to me is that the job requirement for me is I can't take a job as a police officer or anything close to it. So I'm getting ready to experience that, so I can answer that here in a couple of months.
Okay, sure. Now, Liam, it sounded like the process for you might be taking a little bit longer than a couple of weeks. Can you talk about that?
Sure. So when I actually separated in October last year, I eventually was able to figure out that I had 90 days to submit my application. It's 90 days after your last day of work from the job terminated due to your disability. And I submitted that all in, and then they ended up emailing me back explaining they needed some further workers' comp documents that I wasn't able to give, and I'm still, I think I'm over the 90 days at this point, and I haven't heard back from them. So I'm not sure. They gave me kind of a time frame of about 8 weeks was what they expected after everything is submitted to either give me approval or denial. But kind of like I mentioned earlier, I don't know what that's going to look like because I already had to start a new job. And if they come back and say, oh, well, you've been working a job that we feel is too similar to a police officer, not going to give you the benefit at all, then there's just a lot of unknowns, and it causes me more stress now than my injury does, if I'm being honest. I'm not able to get any sort of answers on I'm not able to plan ahead in any sort of way. I just get nothing. I'm basically just going to avoid waiting for an email back from one of the people at DRB to give me some form of answer at this point. But anyways, about 8 weeks is what I was told after everything is submitted.
Okay, thank you.
And I don't want to speak for Liam's position, but you would think that the state would be happy to have somebody who has the skills and abilities to do a job that they're already trained up on. They already have interview skills. He's not arresting people. He's not carrying a firearm, but he's still using the skills that he was taught while in the state of Alaska to do something. It's very difficult, just because we can't be police officers anymore doesn't mean you have to go send me to be a, something completely different. Let me use what I'm passionate about. I just can't do the basic requirements of a police officer. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, so here's something. I was just looking through some of my emails to retirement disability, and it's on the same topic here. What was kind of blown me away, and still does, is what was told to me is that the measure we're trying to meet, Mr. Teeling, is if you are presumably permanently disabled from being a police officer ever again. So my whole thought process on this is if the criteria in order to receive disability benefits to begin with, the criteria that has to be met is we can never be police officers ever again. In order to meet that for the first time, but then every single year after we have to reprove that we can never do something again, you would think that the definition in and of itself of never being able to do something would be a continuity that would last the remainder of the time that you're receiving disability. It's just an interesting thing that the state requires you to meet this definition of never being able to do something again, yet every single year we're required to prove again that we can never do that again. That's just kind of a interesting thing that I was thinking here as I was going through my emails. Like, I remembered somebody had said something like that to me, and I was like, how does this make any sense?
Yeah. To what extent has the disability process, the applications, all of the paperwork and whatnot, to what extent does that accommodate the fact that you are not the same person that you were when you were, originally hired? Now I'm listening to each of you talking. You seem fairly lucid despite the fact that you have these injuries. I'm trying to think about not only your situations, but what about the next trooper that gets injured that can't form a coherent sentence, and their ability to reason is severely limited, if not non-existent. How would they experience this process differently? Is the system designed in such a way that it could accommodate the fact that these disabilities actually impact your ability to apply for benefits, for example?
I think short answer to that is no, I don't think so. I had to have a specific, and then she was my vision therapist that actually took the role on as being my occupational therapist and helping me go through the entire process of gathering the information together. Even as lucid as I am now, some of that comes from the fact that I'm on medications. One that's a prefrontal cortex regulator. I have one that's an anti-inflammatory for my brain, as well as a couple for blood pressure, which my brain no longer decides that it wants to help me with sometimes, especially when stressed. Whenever I get an email or message or anything from the state, from workman's comp, from anybody. It causes so much anxiety that I am almost, to be honest, it'll almost make me bedridden at some point. In fact, during this conversation, I just received a letter from an attorney that I was trying to obtain for a workman's comp related issue, that workman's comp is saying that I need to have an attorney for, but the attorney's saying that I haven't met the criteria of being able to get an attorney, but they're requiring me to do all these things that an attorney should do, and I'm not even allowed to get an attorney to discuss any of it with. So in answer, there's no help. It's extremely stressful. It causes a lot of anxiety, and to be honest, I can't say anything for the rest of the guys, but when your entire life is basically hinged upon a paycheck, and it's unfortunate, but that's just the reality behind a living in this society, is you have to be able to pay for things. And like Scott kind of had mentioned, that they get you accustomed to a certain degree of lifestyle, and you live according to, you have a car because you think you're going to have a job for the next 20 years. You have a house that you can make payments for without wages. But then all of a sudden, you get injured on the job doing your job, it crashes down around you, there's nobody there to help you, and now all of a sudden the house that you could afford, you can't afford, and the car payment that you had, you can no longer afford, and you don't get medical benefits. So the reality behind it is the entire process is almost geared against us, but it's geared against us continually. It's an ongoing thing. I've talked to a Tier 3 guy even that's out from an injury, and he says that every single time a letter comes from the Workman's Comp Agency, because he was actually labeled as permanently disabled and still getting paychecks from Workman's Comp, but they could pretty much drop them whenever they want. It's a very anxiety-causing process, and I think that's one of the reasons that some guys just give up. And we see that kind of stuff in the military, where guys just give up, and they're the guys that sometimes will end up on the streets because there is no help. And unfortunately, and I think that there's not a lot of people out there that say that the VA actually works better than this, that the VA is a really good system. But in reality, the VA is actually a better system than what the state currently has for its employees. And that's a kind of a bold statement to say, but I think that the rest of the guys could agree with that. At least when you join the military, there's something there. You can go to the VA for help, and there's somebody there that will help you. There's people that will help you when you have a brain injury to deal with some of these things. When you're a cop or a firefighter or an EMS worker in the state of Alaska, there's nothing. There's no one there to help you. You have to figure it out on your own. You have to go through the anxiety on your own. If you have PTSD, if you have anxiety, if you have depression, if you have a brain injury, the fact that you can live through that and continue to do it every year, I'll be honest, it is difficult. It's difficult to know when that next email is coming in what it's going to say.
I'll add in there, too, that oftentimes through this process, you're not just dealing with DRB, you're dealing with workers' comp. And as these gentlemen have stated, that's a conversation in and of itself. But you're working these processes at the same time, and they're both completely convoluted. And I began this process before these guys did, and so I had zero help. And I don't know if I gave them much help once or if I convoluted their mess. But it was a full-time job for me just to maintain the paperwork and the requirements that they needed, working through the workers' compensation process as well as DRB. If I were to have got a job the day after I left the Anchorage Police Department due to my medical disability, there would have been zero time for me to have continued this process, and perhaps would have just stopped and been like, it's too much, I can't do it. Due to my life circumstances and everything that was going on with me at the time, it was a full-time job just to get to where I am today, and fighting for what statute says that I'm entitled to. And it still is ongoing. I still meet with my doctors, still have to keep in contact with Debbie there at DRB. It is a full-time job in and of itself.
And I'll just jump in and agree with everybody else. I had to get a job right after I was forced to separate from my injury, and I've kind of gotten to the point where I'm getting ready to give up on it. And if I'm being honest, thankfully I have the gentlemen here who are able to to help me out with this, but it's causes me more anxiety than I can even explain. When I see an email come through from DRB, I know I know at best I'm at least going to get no answer at all, and at worst they're going to give me some horrible news and remind me that I was injured for nothing, basically, and I did nothing, and I have to go home and look at my wife and my 4 kids and walk in with a cane and just say, like, I'm sorry, like I didn't know. I didn't know what my benefit was. I thought, and I've had horrible conversations with my wife about this, where I'm just explaining to her, like, I didn't know that this is what the benefit was, and it causes me significant anxiety anytime I have to deal with them, if I'm even able to get a hold of them. Like I said earlier, sometimes it'll take them many days to get back to me with any form of answer, whether it's conclusive or not. That's all I got.
Got it. Thank you.
That's one of the things too, is that conversation with my wife, I think, was probably one of the hardest ones. We kind of learned about it at the same time, and sorry if I get a little emotional about it, but my wife, I'd pretty much been trying our entire life to get us our entire marriage of 16 years to get us a job that had medical benefits that was good. So if something should happen to her or myself or whatever, we'd be taken care of. And my wife, in the middle of actually taking me and driving me to my appointments because I couldn't drive myself, she actually got crashed into by her dog, who was out running between our appointments, and he ended up breaking her knee. And basically, when we found out that we were losing our medical benefits at the end of May, and that we'd have to pretty much cough up anything more that needed for her, she had the whole time had been under the impression that we were going to get medical, as was I at the time. And just when she found that out, the emotional state that I found her in, I think it was almost like I got re-injured again, where she was like, seriously, like, you went through all this for the job, and now we get nothing. And I'd never heard my wife cry like that. And I don't even have kids. I can't even imagine what somebody like Liam or Mike, who have kids or had to go through it. But it's actually a pretty big deal. Some people don't realize it, but medical and healthcare in America is extremely expensive to pay out of pocket. And so now we lost our career, and now we're expected to pay for everything else out of pocket. And it made no sense to her. It made no sense to me. And I'm sorry. I just had to add that in there because I feel for you, Liam. When you said you had to go home and talk to your wife, and it just hit me like that. That's a very difficult thing. I don't think anybody should have to do.
Thanks, Rob. In any other area of society, there's opportunities to hire attorneys whenever, the state's doing something you don't agree with. What's different about this situation that makes it harder for someone in your situation to find an attorney, to hire an attorney, to, that kind of help?
Sir, this is Scott Lanier. I'll just jump in with that one right away because so what we're being told is the way the workman's comp works in the state of Alaska, you cannot hire an attorney to represent you in a workman's comp claim unless your claim has been disputed in any way. So in my case, I've tried to contact multiple work-related attorneys, not necessarily because I had any intention of suing the state or anything like that. I don't consider myself an entitled individual. I've worked for everything that I've ever done. But I couldn't represent myself in this and make these kind of lifelong decisions. And I wanted someone who knew the system, but I physically wasn't able to do it due to the way the laws work in Alaska, is what I was told.
And I reached out to the union attorney and was told by the union attorney that they can't represent me in any of it or give me any advice whatsoever because it didn't have anything to do with a union contract.
And I first met with counsel in May of 22, even before I left APD. I retained counsel, and I finally received a workers' compensation settlement, much lower than I ever imagined. But I did receive a work comp settlement in November of 24. So I was also in contact with my attorneys for 2 years before I ever received that settlement.
Thank you. Well, just a couple more minutes left before I have to call it quits. Any alibis, anything else to add?
Sure, I'll just jump in one last time. So the physical, the emotional anguish of a work-related injury, dealing with the disability section, disability, all the things that we had to do is one thing. That part's not kind of in our vocabulary of the injury, right? So originally, like, I'm reminded every step that I take that I made some kind of decision that cost me to where now in my life, every step that I take, I feel physical pain that I deal with on a regular basis. In my mind, the last thing, like even the workman's comp claim, and like I said, we can deal with the workman's comp on a whole different basis, but the last thing that an injured trooper or police officer or firefighter or anybody in the state doing their job that they were paid to do, the last thing they need to be dealing with is whether their injury is going to be covered. And I'll just end with that. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today, and I hope that this video makes it to the people that it needs to make. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for fighting through the system and finding each other and helping each other along the way as best you can, and others that aren't here, and helping me to understand a little bit about the process and where it breaks down. And I know even if you didn't have any injuries or disabilities, that would have been difficult, but all the more so when you do, and the emotions and all of the other challenges that some of which we haven't even gotten into today because there just hasn't been enough time. But personally, I appreciate knowing that you're still fighting and still trying to find the best path forward, and taking the time and emotional energy and everything else to come and just to spend time with me and let me ask you lots of personal questions that I'm sure you'd rather not be talking about, and rather not be sharing with others, all in a different world. But thank you very much on behalf of my staff and I that are here today, and others that will benefit by your doing so. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
All right. You should have my contact information, so feel free to use it. Scott, what else?
Oh, no, I was just saying thank you. I appreciate your time. I was just waving goodbye.
Very good. All right. Well, farewell to you all then. If you don't have my contact information, I know Rob has it. He can share it with you. Feel free to reach out to Jared or I at any time. This isn't just because I'm a legislator. That's going to end here shortly. So feel free to reach out to me after that. Thank you.
Can I just ask one more question, sir? Like, is there a plan moving forward? Like the information that you received today in this video, like, what's the plan with it? Where do you think that this is going to go?
I will post it on my platform so that those who listen to what I have to say can benefit from it. I'll share it with other legislators. I know that there are going to be some intense conversations on retirement benefits in the legislature here starting tomorrow and until they pass some kind of bill. So now is a great time to be reaching out and talking with people, because it's, at least as far as Juneau's concerned, it's a hot topic, and people are more interested in it now than I think they have been for the last few years.
Well, if it comes down to it, I stick my hand up high and I volunteer to speak to whoever I need to speak to. I just need a way to them.
Great. All right. And if I hear other opportunities to testify or committee hearings, that sort of thing, I'll put that out as well. And if it's of interest, feel free to testify.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Have a good
Thank
day.
you.